All right, so this time we're taking a deep dive into the world of nursing theory,
Okay.
specifically Sister Callista Roy's adaptation model.
All right.
And it looks like we're really trying to understand how this model views individuals
Mm-hmm.
as these dynamic systems, interacting with their world
Yeah.
instead of kind of these isolated beings,
Right.
which is a really fascinating way to think about health and not how we typically view it.
Absolutely.
Um, so to get us started, who is Sister Callista Roy? I mean, she's got a whole model named after her, so she must be kind of a big deal.
Yeah, she really is a pioneer in the nursing field.
Okay.
I mean, just to start, she's got a bachelor's and a master's in nursing, but then she went on and got a master's and a doctorate in sociology.
Wow.
Talk about interdisciplinary.
Yeah, so she's clearly brilliant, but where did this adaptation model come from? Like, did she just cook this up in a lab somewhere?
Well, actually, she was inspired by working with children as a pediatric nurse. She was really fascinated by their resilience and how they were able to adapt to some pretty major physical and emotional changes.
Yeah.
And this really got her thinking about adaptation being at the core of health and well-being.
That's so interesting that she kind of got that inspiration from seeing those kids adapt.
Yeah.
I could see how that would spark her curiosity.
Yeah, and she had some encouragement along the way.
Oh, really?
During a seminar, another big name in nursing, Dorothy Johnson, challenged Roy to develop a model to explain what she was seeing.
Oh, wow. So she had a little push from a mentor, and then all of a sudden a groundbreaking theory comes out.
Right. That's great.
I love that.
It's a good reminder that we all need people who challenge us to think bigger and bolder.
For sure. For sure.
And speaking of thinking big,
Yeah.
she's received a ton of accolades for her work,
Okay.
even being named a living legend by the American Academy of Nursing.
Wow. Well-deserved.
Yeah.
So let's get into the model itself now.
Okay.
What's the big idea behind this whole adaptation model?
So at its core, the model proposes that humans are these holistic beings that are constantly interacting with our environment.
Okay.
It's not just a one-way street, though. You're not just reacting to the world.
Yeah.
You're shaping it as well.
Okay, so it's not just adapting to our surroundings. There's a deeper level of interaction going on.
Right.
So what does that mean for how we think about things like person, environment, health, and nursing?
Yeah.
I feel like those words probably have different meanings in Roy's world.
Yeah, they definitely take on a whole new dimension within this model.
Okay.
So, for example, when Roy talks about the person, she's not just talking about a physical body.
Okay.
She's emphasizing the thinking and feeling capacities of an individual.
Okay.
Your consciousness, how you perceive and understand the world, plays a huge role in how you adapt.
Right.
So it's not just your body reacting, it's your mind, your emotions, your whole being.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like your thoughts and feelings are filtering those external stimuli, and that kind of influences how you respond. It's not a purely objective process. So then how does the environment fit into this model?
Okay.
I mean, is it just the physical space around us?
No, it's a lot more dynamic than that.
Okay.
Roy sees the environment as this constant interplay of stimuli that we're interacting with.
No.
These stimuli can be physical, like temperature or noise, but they can also be emotional, social, or even cultural.
So it's like the entire context of our lives.
Right.
Everything that's influencing us.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is where those focal, contextual, and residual stimuli come in.
Yeah,
Can you give me an example of how those would work in a real-life situation?
absolutely. So let's say you're dealing with a new medical diagnosis.
Okay.
That diagnosis itself would be the focal stimulus. It's
Yeah.
the main thing you're trying to adapt to.
Okay.
But then you also have contextual stimuli like your family support, your access to healthcare, or even cultural beliefs about the illness.
Yeah.
All of these shape how you experience and adapt to the diagnosis.
So it's like layers of influence.
Yeah.
Each one impacting the other. And then what about residual stimuli? What are those?
Those are the tricky ones because they're often lurking beneath the surface.
Okay.
Think about past experiences that might be shaping your response without you even realizing it.
Yeah.
Maybe a previous health scare or a deeply ingrained belief about your ability to cope.
So it's like this hidden layer of influence.
Yeah.
All this subconscious stuff that shapes how we react.
Right.
This is getting really fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's talk about health for a second.
Okay.
Like, does Roy even define it the way we typically do?
That's actually one of the most insightful parts of her model.
Okay.
Roy sees health not as the absence of illness,
Okay.
but as a state of ongoing adaptation.
Okay.
Even when we're facing challenges, if we're responding to stimuli effectively and maintaining a sense of balance, we can still be considered healthy.
So it's not about being illness-free. It's about how well we navigate all these challenges that life throws at us.
Exactly.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for the role of nurses in this whole process?
So nurses become facilitators of adaptation.
Okay.
They're not just treating symptoms. They're helping patients develop the skills and resources they need to adapt effectively.
Yeah.
It's a much more proactive and holistic approach.
Wow. So it's not about fixing people. It's about empowering them to adapt and thrive.
Right.
This is blowing my
I
mind.
know, it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and it gets even more interesting when we dive into how adaptation actually works within an individual.
Okay.
So let's unpack those inner workings.
Right.
Okay, so we've got this big picture of, humans as these dynamic adapting systems.
Right.
But how does that actually play out? Like, what's going on inside us as we're, meeting all these challenges and trying to maintain this balance?
Yeah.
You sent over some material that kind of gets into the nitty-gritty details.
Okay.
And I have to admit, I'm a little nervous to see what's happening under the hood.
Well, it's actually pretty elegant when you break it down. Roy identifies two main subsystems that are driving our adaptation.
Okay.
The regulator and the cognator.
Okay, two systems, regulator and cognator.
Yes.
Those sound pretty technical.
Yeah.
What are they regulating and cognating?
So think of the regulator as like your body's autopilot,
Okay.
handling all of those automatic physical processes that keep you going.
Okay.
So regulating things like your temperature, your blood pressure, heart rate,
Okay.
all those vital functions you don't even have to consciously think about.
So it's like keeping the engine running.
Exactly.
Okay, what about the cognator? Does that have something to do with, thinking?
Exactly.
Okay.
The cognator is all about your mental and emotional processing.
Okay.
It's how you make sense of the world, process information, make decisions, form beliefs.
Okay.
It's your self-concept, your sense of identity, how you see yourself in relation to others.
So the regulator's managing the hardware and the cognator's running the software.
That's a great way to think about it, yeah.
That's a great analogy. But how do these two systems actually show up in our behavior?
Okay.
How do they influence the way we adapt?
That's where Roy's 4 adaptive modes come in.
Okay.
These modes describe the different ways that we respond to stimuli, both physically and psychologically. Think of them as like the outward expression of those internal processes that we just discussed.
4 modes. This is starting to feel like a personality test.
Yeah, right.
Lay them on me. What are these 4 modes all about?
Okay, so let's start with the physiological physical mode.
Okay.
This one's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
It's all about your basic physical needs and how your body works to meet them.
Okay.
So think oxygen, nutrition, rest, activity, protection from harm.
So like the essentials.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If those aren't met, it's going to be pretty hard to adapt to anything else.
For sure.
You can't build a house on a shaky foundation, right?
Right.
You need those basic needs taken care of.
For sure.
But adaptation goes way beyond the physical.
Okay.
That's where the self-concept group identity mode comes in.
Okay.
This one's all about our sense of self.
Okay.
Who we are as individuals and as members of different groups.
It's interesting. So things like our body image, self-esteem,
Yeah.
Cultural background, religious beliefs,
Yes.
all of those factors contribute to how we see ourselves and our place in the world.
Exactly. And the sense of self really impacts how we respond to challenges.
Yeah.
Someone with a strong sense of self-worth might be more resilient when they face setbacks.
Yeah, they have that inner strength to draw on.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what about role function? I'm guessing that's about how we adapt to all the different roles we play in life.
You got it.
Okay.
Each of us juggles multiple roles: parent, child, employee, student, friend.
Right.
The list goes on.
Yeah.
And each role comes with expectations and responsibilities that we have to navigate.
Right.
Think about like a new parent.
Yeah.
They have to adapt their entire lifestyle to care for an infant.
Oh, tell me about it. Sleep deprivation is a whole other level of adaptation. But seriously, I can see how those roles sometimes clash. Create even more challenges like work-life balance.
Exactly. And those conflicts can sometimes lead to real struggles with adaptation.
Right.
But it's not all about the individual roles either.
Okay.
We also have to consider our relationships and connections with others.
Okay.
That's where the interdependence mode comes in.
Okay, I have a feeling this one's about to get deep.
Yeah.
Interdependence, it sounds like. How we rely on each other.
It is.
Okay.
This mode highlights the importance of healthy relationships, giving and receiving love, respect, and support.
Okay.
How we connect with others, communicate our needs, create a sense of belonging.
So basically, we're not meant to do life alone.
Right.
Having those strong connections can really make a difference in our ability to adapt and cope.
Yes, it's like having a safety net.
Yeah.
And this idea of connection, it isn't just touchy-feely stuff either.
Okay.
It has real implications for health outcomes. Studies show that people with strong social support tend to recover from illnesses faster and experience less stress overall.
So those connections are literally good for our health.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But what about when things aren't going so smoothly?
Okay.
Like what happens when our ability to adapt starts to kind of break down?
That's where Roy's 3 levels of adaptation come in. Integrated, compensatory, and compromised.
Okay.
Think of it as like a spectrum.
Okay, a spectrum of adaptation.
Mm.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Walk me through those 3 levels.
All right, so at the integrated level, things are humming along beautifully.
Okay.
Your needs are being met, you're feeling balanced, and you're adapting effortlessly to whatever comes your way.
Sounds blissful.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that's not always the reality.
Right.
So what about compensatory? Where do things start to go sideways?
Compensatory is where you start to feel the pressure.
Okay.
You're facing challenges, but your internal systems, the regulator and the cognator, are working overtime to try to maintain that equilibrium.
Okay.
Think of it like your body's check engine light coming on.
Okay.
You're aware of the issue, and you're actively trying to compensate for it.
So you're pushing through, but you're starting to feel a little frayed around the edges?
Exactly.
Okay.
And if those challenges persist, or if your coping mechanisms aren't effective, you might slip into the compromise level.
Well, that sounds serious.
Yeah, this is where your adaptive capacity is really struggling.
Okay.
Your needs aren't being met, and you're at risk for further decline.
Is that where those ineffective coping mechanisms might kick in?
Right.
Like withdrawing from others or relying on unhealthy habits to kind of numb the stress?
Exactly, and this is where nursing interventions become crucial.
Oh,
Nurses can use Roy's model to assess the situation,
okay.
identify what's causing that breakdown in adaptation, and develop strategies to help the patient regain balance.
So it's like having a roadmap
Yeah.
to understand what's going on and figure out the best way to support that person.
Yeah, it seems like this model gives nurses such a powerful framework to guide their practice.
It really does.
And it all comes down to understanding those complex interactions between the person and their environment.
Right.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore.
Okay.
The 6-step nursing process that Roy outlines in her model.
Oh, a 6-step process.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a system here.
Yeah.
Tell me everything. 6 steps. That sounds pretty thorough.
It is.
What are these magical steps that guide nurses through this model?
Well, they're not magical, but they are very systematic.
Okay.
The 6 steps are assessment, stimulus, identification, nursing diagnosis, goal setting, intervention, and evaluation.
Okay.
It's a way to approach patient care in a holistic and individualized way.
Okay, so break it down for me. What happens in each step?
Okay, so it all starts with assessment.
Okay.
Gathering as much information as possible about the person and their situation.
Okay.
And we're not just talking about, taking their temperature, blood pressure.
Yeah.
This assessment goes deeper, looking at their emotional state, their support systems, their cultural background,
Okay.
anything that might be influencing their ability to adapt.
So it's really about seeing that whole picture,
Right.
not just focusing on the physical symptoms.
Exactly.
And once you have all that information, then you move on to stimulus identification.
Right. We use all that data to figure out which specific stimuli are causing problems for the person.
Okay.
Is it a physical limitation, a stressful work environment, a lack of social support?
Okay.
We need to pinpoint those challenges so we can address them effectively.
Makes sense. So then the nursing diagnosis isn't just about like the medical condition. It's about the person's ability to adapt to that condition.
Exactly. We're looking at the whole person and how they're interacting with their environment.
Okay.
And this helps us formulate goals that are focused on promoting adaptation and improving their overall well-being.
Okay. So we've got the assessment, the stimuli, the diagnosis.
Right.
Then what? Does the magic wand come out in the intervention stage?
I wish it were that simple. But the intervention phase is where we put our nursing expertise into action.
Okay.
Based on the assessment and diagnosis, we develop a plan to help the person adapt more effectively.
So what kinds of interventions are we talking about?
Okay.
Is this where the medications and treatments come in?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
But it can also involve things like teaching coping skills, connecting them with support groups, modifying their home environment to reduce stressors, or just providing emotional support and encouragement.
Wow. So it's a really diverse toolkit.
Yeah.
It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Not at all.
Each intervention is tailored to that individual and their needs.
Exactly.
And the final step, evaluation, is crucial.
Yes, very important.
We need to make sure those interventions are actually working.
Yeah,
Are they adapting more effectively? Are they feeling better?
right.
If not, we go back to the drawing board.
Exactly.
Adjust the plan.
It's a constant process of assessment, adjustment, and reassessment.
Yeah, this model really keeps nurses on their toes.
Yeah.
It sounds incredibly effective, but I know some people have pointed out some potential weaknesses.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges of trying to apply this model in the real world?
One of the main criticisms is that it can be pretty time-consuming.
Okay.
I mean, gathering all that in-depth information about a person's internal and external environment,
Yeah.
it takes time
Right.
and careful observation.
For sure.
And in a busy healthcare setting, time is often in short supply.
That's true. Nurses are already juggling so many demands.
Yeah.
It can be tough to find the time for such a comprehensive assessment.
Yeah. Are there any other limitations?
Yeah, are there other limitations?
Another challenge is that this model might not be as practical in emergency situations
Okay.
where really quick decisions are crucial.
Right.
You don't always have the luxury of doing a deep dive assessment when someone's life is on the line.
Right. You have to act fast.
Okay.
But even if you can't apply every aspect of the model in those high-pressure moments, it seems like the underlying principles could still be helpful in guiding your decision-making.
Absolutely. Having that framework in mind can help nurses prioritize their actions
Okay.
and focus on supporting the person's ability to adapt even in the midst of chaos.
So despite those challenges, Roy's model has had a huge impact on nursing practice.
It really has.
It's not just a theory gathering dust on a shelf.
Not at all. It's been widely studied and applied in various settings,
Okay.
from hospitals to community health centers.
So it's really being used.
Yes, it's given nurses a common language to describe what they do and a framework to guide their care.
It's like a lens through which they can view their patients and their work,
Exactly.
helping them make those connections between the person and the environment.
Right, and that deeper understanding ultimately leads to better, more personalized care.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Yeah.
Sister Callista Roy's adaptation model gives us a really powerful way to think about health and well-being.
Yes.
It reminds us that we're not these static beings.
Right.
We're constantly adapting to the world around us.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need a little help navigating all those changes.
And it also highlights the incredible role that nurses play in that process.
For sure.
They're not just caregivers, they're facilitators of adaptation, helping people develop the skills and resilience to thrive in the face of challenges.
It's a beautiful reminder that we're all interconnected
Yeah.
and that our ability to adapt is influenced by everything around us.
Absolutely.
Our physical environment, our social connections, our thoughts, our emotions.
Right.
It's all intertwined.
It is. And here's something to ponder as you go about your day.
Okay.
Think about a time when you had to adapt to a major life change.
Okay.
Which of those 4 adaptive modes, physiological, self-concept, role function, or interdependence, was most challenged during that experience?
Okay.
And what helped you regain that sense of balance?
That's a great question to reflect on. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Sister Callista Roy's adaptation model.
Okay.
We hope you've gained some new insights and a fresh perspective on what it means to be human in this constantly changing world.